podcasts, forum, magazine, meetups, loads of free courses, books, multiple businesses, manage a team of 50 plus. Are we superhuman? No, far from it. Besides having a wonderful team, we've learnt over the years to maximise our productivity, and today we give you all those secrets.
Yes, welcome to the Property Podcast, where every Thursday morning property investors just like you come together to be informed and inspired. And while we understandably spend a lot of time talking about property, there is far more to success in property than just knowing the ins and outs of tenancies and investments and mortgages and all the rest of it. Yes, you need all that, but you also need to actually just get down and do what needs to be done. As Rob's already alluded to, we get a fair bit done, and that is thanks to a collection of techniques that we have developed over years. Well, today we're going to shortcut those years for you and just give you all of them all at once so you can start doing more and doing better. And as well as that, we've got a potentially game-changing news story, and stick around to the end for Hub Extra, where we've got a cracking resource for you as well.
So this news story of the week, Rob, actually kind of went under the radar, and I'm surprised it wasn't more widely reported, because I think this is quite big and could really change the future of the property industry, certainly from a lettings and sales point of view. And that's that Facebook have entered the UK property market, and they have partnered with Zoopla and On The Market, which you may or may not have heard of. But the big one is Zoopla are now with Facebook, and maybe just as big news is that Rightmove aren't. But Rob, Facebook in property, they don't do things small. You know, they don't like dip their toe into anything. They normally come in with a sledgehammer in any market they enter. So for me, this is pretty big news.
Yeah, they're doing it in the US already, and it's quite big there. This is the first time it's happening in the UK. And when something's new, you never really know how it's going to work out, but it could potentially be a game changer, because the reason that the property portals are so powerful is that that's where people go to look for properties to rent. People used to go to the local paper, now they go to the portals. People aren't going to individual agents' websites. They're not looking in shop windows. They're going online to the big portals. And what's bigger than even the biggest of the big portals? It's Facebook. That's where a huge amount of people spend a huge amount of time. So having rental properties listed on there is a really big deal. And potentially, Rob, this is a really big deal for Zoopla, because it seems like they've really stolen the march here on Rightmove. Rightmove so far is the big beast. It's got by far more name recognition than anyone else. That tends to be where people go. But now Rightmove aren't on there and Zoopla are. That seems pretty big to me.
Yeah, that seems really big. I'm quite surprised by this. And I think Rightmove either need to get on board and solve whatever dispute they have with Facebook, or get left behind. Rightmove is huge, but Facebook is a lot bigger. It's like Rightmove's gone from primary school to secondary school, and they don't like the big Facebook bully. Well, the problem is, Facebook is huge and he's not leaving school for a long time. Anyway, enough school analogies. But the point is that if this really takes off, Rightmove could be left behind. And also, that if your letting agent currently doesn't use Zoopla, probably want to have a conversation with them, because of course you don't want to now abandon Rightmove. It's still the biggest, and it may be for some time, and maybe will be forever. But you don't want to miss that Facebook exposure as well. So make sure that if your property is listed for rent, that the agent you work with covers Rightmove and Zoopla. And if your agent doesn't know about the Facebook tie-up, then that's a bit worrying as well. But hopefully you've got one who's on the ball and knows exactly what they're doing. For me, Rob, and I know for you, this is definitely one to watch. And if this moves in any big shape or form in the future, we'll keep you in the loop.
Right, this week we're going to talk about one of our favourite topics. Yes, of course we talk about one of our favourite topics every week, because property is one of our favourite things to talk about. But something that we enjoy talking about just as much as property, if we're honest, is how to make the most of your time, how to have productive and enjoyable days, spending your days doing things that make you happy and move things forward and give you a sense of success, rather than getting bogged down in stuff that you don't enjoy doing, or worse of all, not really being sure what you should be doing and just letting the days pass you by. And Rob, I think this is something that we're quite qualified to talk about, because while we're by no means perfect, we do seem to hear a lot from people. Wow, you guys do a lot. How do you do it?
Yeah, it's not because we're anything special. We are just normal blokes. We don't do anything different. We don't have a special cereal in the morning. We don't have abundance of energy. In fact, actually, both of us get quite tired. But I think over time, if you're just constantly testing and tweaking things and finding out what works best for you and how to make yourself really productive, you can actually pack a tremendous amount in. And that's the whole point of this episode, is we've done this over years and years and years and worked out what works best for us. Now, hopefully, some of this will work really well for you. Chances are not all of it will, but there's going to be some stuff in here that you haven't tried before, and it might be just worth testing because it might be able to unleash even more productivity into your week, which allows you to get more and more results. So we've got a bit of a list, some really impactful, some little tips, but there's something for everyone here. But the first one, Rob, is really important, which is how we organise our weeks.
Yeah, this is one where we differ. We use two different models for making the best of our day. So to start with, of course, you need to actually plan your day and know what you want to achieve out of it, and we'll come to that later. But when it comes to how we fit things in, we each do it differently. So I just have a simple to-do list. So I know at the start of the day what needs to get done. I'll be aware of the commitments that I've got to work around and how much time I've got for working, and then I'll just make sure that I get through that list. Pretty simple. We've got more to say about to-do lists later, but it's pretty basic. Rob, you do something more interesting though, which is you actually take the same approach to tasks as you do to meetings or any other appointments, and you actually block out a specific time for each task. And I think it's worth you talking about that a bit, because I think that's probably something that hardly anyone actually does.
Yes, the calendar is my master. I'm not in charge, my calendar is. So my week is set out in my calendar. So like Rob said, meetings, of course, will go in my calendar. But things like travelling to meetings will also go in my calendar. And if I'm working on a train, then I will put tasks that I want to complete in my calendar while I'm on the train. But also if I've just got a general task to do while I'm in the office or working from home, that also will go in my calendar, because a lot of people like chunks of my time, whether it's team members, external parties or hubbers. You know, people want to have a chat for different reasons, some fun, not so fun. So if I don't block out chunks of time to get tasks done, then I found they won't all get done. And I've also found that if I leave chunks of time open, they just get filled up. So if I've got an afternoon free, I make myself busy by poking my nose in and find out what's going on in one of the businesses, or spending a bit more time engaging with people on social media. Not necessarily bad things, but am I making the very best use of my time? If I want to do those things, I'm probably better off scheduling them in my calendar. So travel, tasks, meetings, and even trips to the gym are all in my calendar. And I tend to just review it once a week, early in the morning, set my week up, leaving a few gaps for emergencies or things I've not thought of. But most of my week, or 2 or 3 weeks ahead, are generally booked up. And I've got some recurring events and then some ad hoc stuff too. I found for me, because there's so many moving parts, operating through a calendar has been a real game changer, and my productivity levels have soared since I started operating this way a few years ago. So Rob, that's how we lay out our weeks, but let's share some of the things people can consider doing to be a little bit more effective each week, month and year.
Yeah, so we've just introduced two different ways that you can organise your day. But before going into the day-to-day in any more detail, I think it's important to zoom out and consider why you're doing what you're doing and make sure that you're working on the right things. And this is where we tie everything back into goals. It's really easy to be a busy fool. Your time will fill itself up, whether that's you finding things that you feel you should be doing, or that other people tell you that you should be doing because that's what successful people do, or other people filling up your time with requests and things that they want you to do. Whether you take control of it or not, your time will get filled up. So it's really important that the things that you actually spend your time doing are the ones that are going to get you to where you want to be. I bet practically no one who is listening to this podcast right now is truly lazy, in that they'll sit around twiddling their thumbs, just crashed out in front of the TV, not doing a lot. Okay, we all do that occasionally, but won't be doing that most of the time. But there will be a large number of people who are really busy and they're getting a lot done, but they're not the right things, and it's not particularly getting them to where they want to be. So I think a really, really important thing to do is regularly set and review your goals, and then set all your tasks in relation to achieving those goals. So make sure that everything that you do is a small step towards the bigger goal that you ultimately want to achieve. It's a process of figuring out where you ultimately want to be going, what the big goal is, and then chunking it down. Taking a big lifetime goal, breaking it down into annual goals, going from there into quarterly goals, and from there into monthly, weekly, daily, even hourly. Every business will have goals about what it wants to achieve in different periods of time, and there's no reason why you shouldn't run your life the same way.
It's well documented on this podcast how we've talked about how goals have certainly changed our life. And it's not just goal setting, there is a lot more to that, which we're going to get into. But having those big aspirational goals and then breaking them down into chunks to work towards them is absolutely huge. Now, we're so passionate about this subject that we have a course on goal setting. So check out the propertyhub.net/courses, and you can check out our free course on how we set goals. It really could change your life. So I know it sounds a bit dramatic, but for a half-hour investment, hopefully you'll be mildly entertained, certainly learn a lot, and it could do something a lot more dramatic for you. So check that out. Another thing you do, Rob, when you work on your to-do lists is that you set them up every evening. Do you want to explain why you do that?
Yeah, I found that this has made a really big impact for me. So rather than putting together my to-do list in the morning for the current day, I'll do it the previous evening and make sure that that's one of the last things I do in the previous working day. There's a practical reason and a slightly woo-woo reason for doing that. The practical one is that I've got my best energy in the morning and I don't want to waste any of that energy trying to work out what I should be doing. I just want to start my working day and start working on what the most important thing is that's going to move me towards my goals. The slightly woo-woo part is that by thinking about it the previous evening, I believe that your brain will unconsciously process things in the background. So if I plan for something I want to do the next day, even if I'm not actively thinking about it because I'm watching Netflix and going to bed, in the background somewhere, my brain will be preparing. And so I'll actually be able to start on that task more quickly, get into it more easily. And a lot of the thinking that needs to be done about it will have happened in the background. Whether that's true or not, you could debate, but I really do think there's something in it. But the main point here is preparation. Rob's already said that he plans weekly, and that works for him. He sets everything out around the obligations he's got, make sure that everything that needs to get done gets done. I do it daily. That works for me. But the main thing is some kind of advanced planning. So you're not just sitting there going, right, time to do some work. What am I going to do? You should know that before you actually sit down to work.
Next on our list is resist doing the tasks you don't enjoy. And if you can, outsource them instead. So self-awareness is key here. Really knowing what you're good at and what you're best at on your property ventures is key. If you are great at finding the deals and setting them up, then fantastic, do a lot of that. But if you're not so good at the project management, if it's a refurb, then get someone in, because if you don't enjoy it and if your energy isn't good around that task, well, then it's odds on that you're not going to be very good at it as well, because you won't give it your full energy. It's not in flow for you. There are lots that Rob and I do, but there is a far bigger list of things we don't do. Now, it's got a lot easier for us, admittedly, because we've built a wonderful team who excel at the things that we're rubbish at. But even early on, as soon as we could both hire virtual assistants, we did, just for a few hours a week, to take away the tasks that we really hated. And then we took away the tasks that, we hated just a little bit. And then the ones that, I'd rather not. And now we just do the stuff that we're really good at, day in, day out. Occasionally there's the odd task that we have to do, but most of the time, we're doing the stuff that we're really best at. So make sure you're doubling down on the stuff you're best at, because that's where you'll have most impact. And as soon as you can, outsource the stuff that you're not so hot on.
And you can go a step further than that as well. Rather than just delegating a task, you could try to eliminate the task completely. You're definitely doing things that somebody else could do better than you, but chances are you're doing things that nobody needs to do. So you can experiment with this by making a not-to-do list. Make a list of tasks where you're not sure if it makes any difference or not. Try eliminating those tasks. Just stop doing them and see if it actually makes any difference. So an easy place to start for most people would be email. Most people feel compelled to read all their email and reply to as much of it as they can. What would happen if you just didn't respond to certain types of email? What would happen if you only checked it in the afternoon? Okay, again, at work you have to be careful about this, but chances are you've got more flexibility than you might think. In a work situation, you could take the same approach to meetings. Okay, not just stop turning up, but if you think there are meetings where you don't add in any value, speak to someone and see if you can get out of attending that meeting by just submitting some ideas in advance or getting a report at the end. And we're going to go on to talk about a lot of other things now, but just to sum up, I think that the ideas that we've talked about so far are more important than anything else. Rob said earlier that we're not special, which is absolutely true. And he also said that we try to spend our time just doing what we're good at. But something that I think is important to acknowledge is that we're actually good at quite little. But I don't think we're unusual there. Most people aren't brilliant at everything. We are absolutely not. We are terrible at a vast array of things. But I think what we are good at is knowing what needs to be done in the first place. And that's more important than almost anything else. I think knowing what needs to be done and putting together a plan for how to get that thing done is in many ways more important than the actual doing. It's also the hardest part. There are lots of tips for how to pack more in, but actually doing the hard thinking about what should be done in the first place, that's what really gets the results.
So, once you've figured out what needs to get done, how do you get it done? That's the next part. As Rob said, it's the figuring out that's really important, but hopefully we've given you the tools to master that now. So once you've got that locked down, you want to be productive with that time you've put aside. Now, one of the most effective ways, and it's super basic, but it works, and that's why we use it, is just have a deadline. You can do this in different ways. For me personally, my calendar tells me how long I've got to do that block of time. And I'll have another meeting after that time, or I'll have another task that needs to be done. So I can't extend that time. I've got to get it done in that block. So that deadline for me works really, really well. But it's also an incentive. If I've given myself an hour and I can power it out in 45 minutes or 50 minutes, it means I've got 10 minutes free, which I may give myself a mini break, or I may fit another call in. It's up to me, but that time then is mine. So having a form of deadline is really important.
You can also give yourself a fake deadline. So something called the Pomodoro technique, which is where you basically set a timer for 25 minutes and your aim is to power out a task in 25 minutes. Then you have a break for 5 minutes and then do another block and just keep on doing that. What this is doing is giving yourself a fake deadline, giving you a sense of urgency. And this can be really effective. You can take tasks that you would otherwise drag out to a couple of hours by getting distracted and wandering off and doing something else, that if you just sit down and focus, you can power out in a short amount of time. I think it's natural that for the most part, people only do things when they absolutely have to. Think back to when you were at school. Chances are you did all your homework the night before. I did. I think most people did. However long you give someone to do a task, they'll probably do it at the last possible moment. So rather than fighting against that, just give yourself really tough deadlines. You're not at school anymore, so you get to set the deadline. Give yourself a really tight one, even if it's a fake one, and you will end up getting way more done than you otherwise would.
We've already touched on goals and the goals course that you should check out on the Property Hub website. But in that goals course, we don't just talk about goals, we talk about habits as well. Because habits and goals working together, I believe, are one of the keys to success. And Rob, I know this is something that you're even more passionate about, is the value of habits and systems to set up predictable success.
Your habits, I think, are super important. Because if there's something really important that you want to get done that isn't something that would naturally just get done, then you've got two choices. You can either use willpower or you can create a habit. And if you try to use willpower, it will not work. And a great example of this is New Year's resolutions. This is why they always fail, because you've got a bit of willpower at the start of the year. You go, I want to lose some weight, so I'm just going to eat less and be really disciplined about it. And by about the second week, or the first week if you're me, that's going to completely fall apart. Your willpower will be gone and you'll go back to how you were before, because you're trying to bulldozer it through with willpower. Whereas instead, if you cultivate a habit, you get to the point where it just happens. So a great example is brushing your teeth. You don't have to use willpower to force yourself to brush your teeth in the morning, I hope. You just do it because it's a habit. It's something that you've always done. Therefore, it's something that you just do automatically. You don't have to think about it. And if you can take more useful things and put them on autopilot, then it frees up the willpower for when you really need it. So let's relate this to property. You might, in January, have got really excited about the idea of property and go, I'm going to buy 2 properties this year. And now here we are in September, and maybe you haven't done that yet because, you really wanted to, but you got busy and things happened and it was all a bit difficult. If instead you'd cultivated the habit of, say, looking on Rightmove for 5 minutes first thing every morning and calling one agent off the back of it to set up a viewing for something that looked interesting, then by now you almost certainly would have done what you set out to do and probably then some. And after the first few days, you wouldn't have had to think about it because the habit was there. And that's why, Rob, I think tying habits and goals together is so important. Having the goal, knowing what it is you want to do, is essential. But rather than fighting against yourself, if you can just find ways of making automatic the steps that you need to get towards that goal, you've got a far greater chance of success.
You really have. So, last reminder today is go and check out that course. It's free, so why not? Take advantage of it. Now, a big one, and something I've really come to appreciate over the years, is accountability. If in work, your boss, if you have one, says, please can you do this by such a time or date, you're not going to turn up on that time or date and go, I haven't done it. You're going to do it because someone's held you accountable. But in your personal life, you may choose not to hold yourself accountable to anyone. And that, for people who are super, super disciplined, is fine. But for us mere mortals, it probably isn't going to work. Having somebody in your property journey doesn't have to be a JV partner, but just somebody you work with to say, hey, I'm going to do these things by such a time, knowing that you've got to go and report back on your results is huge. Now, that could be a mastermind group, it could be a friend, it could be a work colleague. It doesn't really matter who it is as long as you respect them. Because if you respect them, going back and saying, hey, I haven't done these things, will embarrass you. If you don't really care about what that person thinks of you, then you're not really going to be bothered telling them that you haven't delivered on the results. Now, we've been doing this podcast for over 5 years, and it is not down to our incredible discipline. It's down to mainly because we wouldn't want to let each other down. We respect each other, and if one of us didn't turn up at 7 a.m. on a Monday, it'd be a pretty crappy move. So neither of us is going to do that, and that's why week in, week out, we've been able to deliver a podcast for 5 years. It is not down to our master ninjutsu discipline. It's just down to having somebody you respect holding you to account. It's as simple as that. A simple technique that you can deploy in many areas of your life. It really works. If you do this, you will see the results rocket. It's no surprise that so many successful businesses have co-founders. Mark Zuckerberg didn't start it all alone. I'm sure he is super disciplined and an incredible person, but even with all the skills and talent he possesses, he still didn't go it alone. And that is partly to distribute the skill sets around the company that starts, but it's also accountability and holding people to account. It's massive and it really works, so try it.
Yeah, and in a work environment, that tends to be something that happens naturally. But when it's something that you're doing for yourself, property in particular, because it's quite a solo enterprise, it's something that isn't naturally there. So if you create it for yourself, and the tools are there, the property forums there, and the meetups are there, then I guarantee it will make an enormous difference. Okay, so we've talked about what you should be doing, how to figure out what's important in the first place. We've talked about how to make sure that those important things actually get done. But now let's talk a little bit about how to get more done every day. This is the detail now. Doing the right things and doing them reliably is by far the most important thing. But chances are you still want to squeeze a little bit more out of each day. And Rob, a really easy and powerful place to start with that is something that we've talked about before recently, which is eliminating distractions.
It's so easy to fall into the trap of wasting time. We all do it, but it's even harder today because we've got so many people and devices and apps competing for our attention. So one of the things you should do almost straight away is turn off notifications on your phone. I don't have any notifications on the phone. If someone calls me, then it'll ring, but that's the only notification I get. Text messages, WhatsApp, social media. If I go into any of those apps, I'll see messages, but they do not come up on my phone. And that's because I do not want to be distracted. After you've downloaded an app, the reason you see the request for push notifications straight away is because that app provider knows how important it is for attracting your attention. So don't give it to them. Unless it's critical, don't give it to them. Switch it to off. You will see a huge increase in your productivity. But something I do in addition to this is I'll constantly just review the apps that I have on my phone and go, what is taking my time? Am I happy with that? And a great recent example is I've deleted Twitter off my phone. I've not deleted my account. I still access it via desktop, but then it's very deliberate when I go on it. On my phone, I found that I used to just open Twitter up several points throughout the day and just start reading stuff, not engaging with people, just reading stuff. And most of the stuff on Twitter is pretty angry. So I came to the conclusion that this is not a good use of my time and actually not a good place to be spending my time because a lot of people on Twitter are pretty angry and aggressive. Now, there are lots of lovely people there as well, so I'll keep my Twitter account. But the point is, on my phone, I was finding myself dragged in more and more and more. It's a really interesting ecosystem, Twitter, and it's a type of place you can lose time pretty quickly. So what have I found since then? Well, I still go on my phone just as much, but I'm spending it on more productive apps. And I've actually found that the stuff I'm reading instead is on Pocket, a great app that we've talked about before, which is full of interesting and educational stuff that's built around my interests. So I'm still using that time, but I'm using it in a far more productive and interesting way. I've not picked up my phone less, but when I do pick it up, I'm using it in a better way. Another discipline I have is I'll only allow one game on my phone at a time. Now, you may be shocked to think that I have any games on my phone, but there are times when I'm on a flight or I'm really tired on travel that I don't want to work, and I may just want to let my brain switch off by doing something pretty easy. Well, I've got a game for that, but I do not let myself have more than one game at a time. And if I find that game starts to creep into time that I deem as my productive time, it gets deleted. My self-awareness kicks in, and I know, wait there, I haven't got discipline with this game, and it goes. So just little things like that, those little disciplines, those regular reviews of your use on your devices could unlock chunks and chunks of time. There's probably lots of you listening who spend hours upon hours on social media every week on your phone. Imagine if you just gave half that time to property. Imagine what the results would look like after a year.
Those are all really great tips, and I do the same thing myself. I think there's a hidden point behind that as well, though. You were just talking, Rob, about how you don't allow yourself to have any more than one game. And a lot of the language is around that. And it sounds like you're being quite hard on yourself. But I think that's where a lot of success in this kind of thing comes from. It's being hard on yourself. It's holding yourself to high standards and not relying on anybody else to tell you what's acceptable or what you should be doing, but taking control of it yourself and deciding what standards you want to stick to and holding yourself accountable to those standards. Because when you're an adult, you can do pretty much whatever you like. There's no one telling you what to do anymore. So you could just go absolutely nuts. But if you do, it might be rewarding in the moment, but it won't ultimately get you to where you want to be. You need to be enforcing discipline on yourself and tying it back into habits. The easier you can make it for yourself to do that, the more success you'll have. So Rob didn't just say to himself, oh, you know what, I'll try really hard to look at Twitter less often. He deleted Twitter so he couldn't. I do the same thing when it comes to grocery shopping. I just won't allow things that I shouldn't have to go onto the online shopping order. That way it's not in the house and I can't be tempted. It's really easy. It means you just have to have that willpower once in that moment where you make that decision, and then the rest of the time it's all taken care of for you. So I think being tough with yourself is a really important point. But you've got to be a bit kind to yourself as well and understand yourself and understand what's realistic. And Rob, something that I've heard you talk about a lot is understanding your energy levels and working with your natural rhythms when it comes to energy.
I've used the term game changer and dramatic upturns in life and some big claims today. But I'm not going to stop now because, again, this was huge for me. When I started to manage my time around my energy, the increase in productivity, again, leaped up several notches. I'm a morning person. I love mornings. We do these podcasts at 7 a.m. on a Monday. Most people think, what would you want to do anything at 7 a.m. on a Monday? But actually, podcasting is super fun. So to kick off the week with a podcast is a great way to start the week. And 7 a.m., because I'm a morning person, works great as well. And actually, I'll start at 7 most mornings throughout the week because that's when I get most of my creative work done and I have the least distractions. There's only a few hardcore team members who'll reach out to me in those early hours, and probably because they've cottoned on that I'm there and they can reach me and get a reply. But I am pants mid-afternoon. I've got no energy. If you want anything decent out of me between the hours of 3 and 5 o'clock, you're in trouble. So I may set myself a gym session, which I often don't do. Or if I'm not doing that, then I'm setting myself an easy task, something I find particularly easy. So a phone call, for example, something I could do without much energy, something that's easy for me, and something that doesn't require too much high input of creativity. And that's not just today, that's every day. That's how my energy rolls. I tend to wake up a bit after 5 o'clock, which is useful because today we've got a webinar at 6-ish. But again, that's not by chance as well. I know my energy levels have picked up a little bit by then, and I'll be able to deliver on a webinar. So it's not about working like a machine for 12 hours a day, because like we said a few times, we're just human. We're not robots. We do get tired. And certain types of work or environments do make you tired, Rob. And Rob, luckily for both of us, our energy levels tend to match, and you've become a morning person, which is great for me. And so we get so much done. But environments, not just times, but environments can make you come alive with energy, but also make you tired as well. And I think it's important to be aware of that too.
Yeah, exactly. Like the classic is introvert, extrovert. So the definition of an extrovert is someone who gets their energy from being around other people. And as an introvert, your energy gets depleted by being around other people. And because I'm an introvert, it doesn't mean I don't like people. It doesn't mean that I'm shy. It means I've only got so much energy per day for things that are social. So I'll restrict the total amount, and I'll also try to have it towards the end of the day or in the afternoons when I've already got my creative work done. So I don't come away from something exhausted and then try to get some creativity going. It just doesn't work. Also, if you've got control over your working environment, if you're lucky enough to choose where you work, that can make a big difference too. So by understanding yourself and how you respond to different times of day and different contexts, you can actually get a lot more out of yourself without putting demands on yourself that you're never realistically going to be able to fulfill.
Now, with all this happening and all this super productivity, you'd think, well, once I implement all this, you'll never procrastinate again. Not true. We still do it. It happens. But it's noticing it happen and then doing something about it. If you just hope you'll stop procrastinating, that willpower, for me, often isn't there. I'll need something more. And for me, I need a reset. So if I'm in the office or working from home, doesn't really matter. I'll go for a walk, just a walk around the block, 5, 10, 15 minutes, reset myself and come back in. I find myself, I need that switch, something to get me out of the procrastination by taking a different action rather than using willpower. If you struggle with procrastination, give yourself a tool for resetting. Maybe do some press-ups, read a book for 10 minutes. It doesn't really matter what you do, but just do something if you find that you procrastinate a lot. Find a way of resetting. And that means instead of wasting hours upon hours, you may have wasted minutes.
And finally, when it comes to trying to pack more into each day, I'll leave you something that sounds trivial. It's not as powerful as some of the other things that we'll talk about, but it could save you a hell of a lot of time, which is learning how to use your tools to their full potential. So a lot of us will be working with computers all day. The same goes for whatever the tool is, but if it's a computer, then learn how to use it to maximum effectiveness. For example, I talk about this a lot and it sounds stupid, but keyboard shortcuts. If you know keyboard shortcuts, it'll save you an enormous amount of time. Okay, it might only be a few minutes per day, but add it up over a year. It's a lot of time that you could be spending doing things that are more rewarding or more useful. And whatever your line of work is, there'll be tools that you could use to save repetitive effort. Chances are, whatever your tool, especially if it's a computer, you're probably only using it to about half of its effectiveness tops, and there's so much more that you could do. You don't need to book yourself in for a course or anything like that. Just start questioning it. Every time you do something that's a bit annoying, think, there's got to be a better way of doing this, and just Google it, and there'll be a different technique, or there'll be a bit of software, or there'll be something that will make things quicker and easier. It might take you 5 or 10 minutes to find out what that is and get used to it, but it's going to save you hours over the rest of your working life.
So we've packed in quite a bit there. And if you just test some of these things, I'm sure the impact it can have on your productivity and therefore the results you get in your life could be huge. I think there's a theme through many of these points that we've raised, and that's self-awareness. It's really understanding yourself, understanding your energy levels, understanding your environment and how that affects you, understanding what you're best at and what you're not so good at as well. All these things are so important. If you don't know yourself, then how can you be effective? Now, some people will struggle with that and some people will find it easy. But whether you find it easy or not, something you'll probably find useful is a weekly reflection. I can't claim I've got this locked in as a habit yet, but it's something I do most weeks. And that's reflect on my week. I'll look at all the things that have gone well, and I've got a document that I'll fill out, and I'll write down all the things that have gone well for me that week, all the things that didn't go so well, and the challenges I now face because of that or have faced. I look at the lessons I've learned. I look at my own leadership. I look at things that I'm roadblocking, stuff that I'm holding other people back on. And I look at my energy levels and how they've been throughout the week. There's loads in there. Once I've taken time to fill those boxes out, I've learned a lot about myself. It's easy to get lost in time. Week after week just goes. You'll know the older you get, the faster time seems to run. Taking that time to stop, pause and reflect, it's not something that comes naturally to me. I live in the future. I'm constantly thinking about what we can do rather than what's been or quite often where we are now. So it's not something I find easy, but the value I've extracted from it has been huge. It really helps me spot things in advance, get to know myself a lot better, and become a far more effective person.
And stick around for Hub Extra, where we're going to be giving you something to help you out with exactly that. So there you go, a jam-packed episode for you. I recommend you start by just picking one thing that really stood out for you. So don't go back and listen again just yet, but just pick one thing that stuck out for you as we were going along and start doing it. Like Rob said back at the start, this has been a process. We figured these things out over years and just kept tweaking and adjusting and using self-awareness to figure out what works. What works for you will be different, but the important thing is just starting. So pick one thing, see how it goes. If it makes a difference, then pick another, whether that's something from our list or something of your own. The great thing is you'll start noticing results quickly, and those results will also really compound over time and leave you in a very different position from where you would have been if you hadn't started.
So it's back on me with reviews. Last week, Rob found out how difficult they are to read out. It seems like it'd be an easy task. Don't worry, our editor stepped in. And it's back on me to read some reviews out. First up, we got Charlie, who says, I stumbled across this podcast only recently, and I've listened to the first 16 episodes so far. I've always held an interest in investing in property for the long term. Once I have my finances in order, I hope to go on and do this. The podcast has given me some quality info so far. I may have not listened to the full back catalogue, as there are quite a few, but the information so far could prove priceless when I eventually do invest. Cheers, Rob and Rob. Well, Charlie, we're 200 plus in, so I hope you get to listen to this one, but thank you. We really appreciate your review. And next in we got Emad, who says, "Hi Robs, what a fantastic resource you provide with the podcast. I'm in the middle of some property training and your advice and wisdom complements it perfectly. I love that I can listen at any time and be reminded of tips and tricks, procedures and protocols, all of which are steering me in the right direction and reducing the likelihood of me making a big mistake. Thank you so much for producing this great info for free. It's unbelievably helpful." Well, thank you for leaving great reviews. We are unbelievably grateful. They are absolutely wonderful. And if you'd like to be wonderful, please do leave us a review. And you may hear it read out in a future episode. Go along to iTunes, pop your thoughts down. Hopefully they're quite nice. And we would love to read it out in the future.
Okay, so it's time for Hub Extra before we wrap up, where every week we give you something a little bit extra, whether that's a quote, a tip, a tool, or a resource, and it's all backed up with a Hub Extra email that will hit your inbox every Friday, and we try to make it the most valuable email you receive all week.
Think we've given you enough value? Not yet. We want to give you more. We've got the templates that I use for my reflection. So the questions I ask myself each and every week, we're going to put into a Google Doc that you can access. You just need to copy it. The instructions will be at the top, but it's really simple, but could make a big impact on your productivity. So go to our show notes this week, which you'll find at thepropertyhub.net/maximise time. That's thepropertyhub.net/maximise time. Go to that link where you'll see all the wonderful show notes and this free resource we put together for you. Go use it. Let us know how you get on.
Yeah, do. You can let us know on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram as Property Hub UK. And if there are other topics that you want us to cover, then let us know as well. It's the best way of sending us feedback. So we very much hope that you found this episode a valuable use of your time. We're going to be back with Ask Rob and Rob on Tuesday and then doing it all again in the Property Podcast next Thursday. And in the meantime, if you'd like to know what we get up to away from the podcast, we do a fair bit. We use these tips, believe me. Then get over to thepropertyhub.net/discover. We can sign up for the next Discovery webinar. But until we next see you, have a great time and be productive. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.